So, I used the same keyboard for 10 years to browse the internet, make websites, play games, and just do some regular coding. You might think that the choice of keyboard isn't that important, and to some degree, you're correct. It's more about how you use it. I've used this keyboard for what feels like almost half my life, and during that period, I've learned something interesting and also developed a skill that helped me code a little bit better. As someone who programs for a living, you could say that I've spent more time with my keyboard than any other tool, or device, or even person. And this might be true for many web developers. So the real question is, why have I never swapped keyboards in over 3,000 days? To answer this question, we're gonna have to make sure you hit the like and subscribe button, because there is no shortcut for that, unlike the letter J, which will help you remember this message. For those of you who haven't realized yet, I'm using an Apple keyboard. To be specific, the Apple Magic Keyboard. And yes, I use this on both Windows and on Apple. There's a reason I've been using this keyboard for the last 10 years, and while its shape and form has changed over the years, its shape is more or less the same in terms of its key width and the way I type on there. There's a few benefits to using this keyboard for so many different years. When I originally started up doing programming and websites, I always wanted to be able to do a lot of touch typing and to be very fast at the number of keys I could output. This isn't as easy as it's made out to be. If you've ever gone to a computer store, you'll realize that every single keyboard has a slightly different feel and use. When you jump onto a, say, Logitech keyboard, or maybe a Dell keyboard, all of them require you to adjust your fingers just a little bit to be able to touch type very fast. And I found that this was a difficulty I had, that when I went to work and when I came back home, I felt my keyboard was so different that I couldn't almost type as well as I would normally do. So that's where I started looking around for different keyboards that I would enjoy. After testing out hundreds of different keyboards, I came to the conclusion that I just like the way that the Apple keyboard works, especially for my fingers. The spacing between the keys just felt right, and I could press down on them just enough with a nice bounce back. They also didn't make too much noise like some mechanical keyboards, and while some people enjoy that, personally I like a more or less quiet keyboard. By doing this, there were a number of benefits. I made sure that I was using the same keyboard at work and at home, and it meant that when I was practicing my touch typing, it was basically becoming muscle memory, so no matter where I was getting faster and I was able to write more code in less time. This only improved later when I purchased myself a MacBook and I found out that the laptop keyboard on a Mac is exactly the same as the Magic Keyboard that I was already using. This meant that all that muscle memory carried across to my laptop as well, so I could program now anywhere and I had a really fast level of performance. Now, there's a few reasons that I think that having a good keyboard is one of the most important things, especially for a developer who's doing coding for websites or applications, because while we are utilizing our mouse or we're doing other stuff, we're predominantly on our keyboards. We're doing things in terminal. We're usually using shortcuts, whether this is just writing out codes and using Emmet to quickly tab out different div tags, or even if it's to do some JavaScript and have some autocompletes. We're basically trusting our keyboards to complete all the functionality that we need on a day-to-day basis. And while this might not seem like a big aspect, it does have a long-term impact on the performance that you do, because over the course of a day or a week or a month or even a year, you're going to see a huge benefit to using a keyboard that works for you. You'll be faster at your typing, at your autocompletes. You'll be making less mistakes, because I'll tell you that I always seem to make a mistake where I maybe cause a variable or a div just to have a quotation missing or a bracket, and then my whole code crashes, and sometimes it's hard to find those. Sometimes they might be buried deep in your code for years and years until everything in your life crashes. But if that doesn't happen, it's all due to your keyboard and nothing to do with you. So make sure that you invest in a very, very, very good keyboard. And other than that, I think that's mainly all the benefits. There were some drawbacks too. For example, when I wanted to do some collaboration with a peer at work and I jumped on his keyboard, I couldn't type a single thing because all the keys that I was used to were in different places. And this felt the same whenever I go to any laptop store now. When I'm browsing the different types of laptops and I'm trying to type on them, I feel very uncomfortable, so I'm almost now stuck using Apple keyboards, which I don't really mind too much because I do use a MacBook still. but it just means that if I ever wanted to swap laptops or swap keyboards in general, it's gonna have to be 10 years of rewriting muscle memory, which I'm sure isn't going to be easy. Another benefit that I personally have found is the fact that Apple take great care and consistency in the design of all their products. And there's a great benefit to this because of the fact that every keyboard that they produce, whether it's for a MacBook Air, or whether it's for a Mac, or whether it's for a MacBook Pro, is all exactly the same as this Magic Keyboard that I've always been using. And this has been very enjoyable because I can jump onto any Apple device and feel comfortable using that keyboard. And this meant that when Apple finally released a keyboard for the iPad, it was exactly the kind of keyboard that I was after, with the exact same specs. There was one disappointment that I've had though with Apple products, and it was when they released their MacBook back in around 2016 or 17, and they tried the butterfly keyboard mechanism. While the keyboard itself was more or less the exact same, pushing down on the keys felt very unnatural because they had a very shallow depth. And this meant that they were also very loud and clicky, and I could never tell whether I hit the keys or not. I did get that MacBook, and I had a lot of problems with it too. Whenever I pressed down on the keys, sometimes they would get stuck, and I had other issues too, but eventually after replacing that keyboard about 4 or 5 times, they gave me a brand new MacBook without that butterfly keyboard. I don't think I'll ever want to go back to that again. Now, would I recommend you use the same keyboard for 10 years? Probably not. It's probably not feasible to find a keyboard manufacturer that creates the same keyboard for that long. But I do recommend learning touch typing. That, I think, is one of the things that has helped me the most when I'm doing development and coding. And just the fact that I've been using the same keyboard for touch typing is probably the thing that I've gotten the most benefit out. I can be confident that I can type out a function or a variable without making a mistake that'll cause the whole application or code that I'm writing to crash. And this is also very useful when I'm doing things like blogs or writing out descriptions or documentation. And more recently, I've been writing this book, which is to help developers learn the basic rules of design. So if you don't know what you're doing, you can create a good looking user interface without even trying, because you're just following rules sort of like TypeScript. By having a good keyboard, I've been able to write this book really quickly, and I'm almost finished as well. You better check it out at the link in the description below. But otherwise, I truly enjoy using this keyboard. I think that's probably the most important thing. If you can look forward to typing on something like this every single day, then you've found the keyboard for you. I'd love to know what you guys use as your favorite keyboard. So make sure that you add that in the comments below. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Oh, just one more thing. If you haven't checked these videos out, check them out. This is one where I figure out whether a bigger monitor makes you a better developer, and here are hundreds of thousands of design resources which are free for developers. Well, not that many, but close enough.